Chapter 1: Who's Your Brother? Nina Jiang was coming down the grand staircase when she saw Julian Gu walk in, his arm wrapped around a woman with meticulously sculpted makeup. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second before Nina quickly looked away. 12 years in this house had taught her what to see and what to ignore. Julian shrugged off his bespoke jacket into the housekeeper's hands and sank into the sprawling sofa, his gaze landing squarely on the hem of Nina's skirt, which ended well above her knees. Going out, though his tone was flat, it was laced with the sharp edge of a cross-examination. She nodded. It's almost graduation. Some classmates organized a dinner. The mention of a mixed-gender gathering made Julian's expression darken instantly. You're not going. It was his standing order. No casual outings, and absolutely no contact with other men. Yet he could parade a revolving door of different women through the Gu family mansion with brazen impunity. Though Nina had silently raged 1,000 times at his hypocrisy, the classic "rules for thee, not for me," she wouldn't dare voice it. In this house, Julian Gu was the sun and the storm. Angering him meant wrecking her own peace. She glanced at her watch. It was getting late. Her best friend, Mia, had organized this whole thing. She didn't want to be the one to ruin it. "Julian, please, just let me go. I promise I'll be back before 9 p.m. The name made his brow furrow instantly. A dangerous glint flashed in his deep-set eyes, his face turning cold and stormy. "Who's your brother?" The air crackled with tension. The woman beside him, Sasha Su, who had been diligently pouring him a glass of water, sensed the awkwardness and tried to smooth things over. "Julian, don't be so hard on your little sister. She's young. A dinner with college friends is perfectly normal. If you're worried, just have your driver pick her up." She was secretly eager for Nina to leave. Having a sister with no blood relation hanging around was an eyesore. But to her surprise, Julian, who had been perfectly gentle with her moments before, snapped, "I'll have the driver take you home." Sasha, flustered, didn't know what she'd said wrong. "Julian, didn't we have dinner plans?" His jaw tightened. The words that left his thin lips were clipped with impatience. "My affairs are not for you to manage." Sasha scurried out, humiliated. The vast living room fell silent as the maids discreetly vanished, leaving only Julian and Nina. His cold eyes swept over her, and an involuntary shiver ran down her spine. He advanced on her, step by step, backing her into a corner of the room. Before she could protest, his cold lips crashed down on hers, possessive and brutal. Nina's eyes flew wide. A sharp, stinging pain bloomed on her lip where he bit down, and the reality hit her. Julian was kissing her. She pushed against his chest frantically, but his hot breath ghosting across her neck sent a paralyzing, electrifying tingle through her body. "Julian, don't. I told you not to call me that. Does a brother do this to you?" She knew. She knew he hated it when she called him her brother. Swallowing the bitter lump in her throat, Nina could only choke out an apology. "I'm sorry, I was wrong. But this dinner is really important to me. I'm just eating with friends. I promise I'll be back soon." "Friends?" he rasped, his voice thick with contempt and a chilling hatred. A murderer's accomplice deserves to have friends. Chapter 2: Julian Gu is toxic. His words were daggers, each one striking her heart and unleashing a flood of agonizing memories. 12 years ago, her parents' tech startup had imploded. Crushed by debt they couldn't repay, they had jumped from their office building, leaving their 10-year-old daughter behind. Julian's father, her parents' closest friend and business partner, had taken her in, treating the orphan Nina as his own. Julian hated her. She knew that from the first day she arrived at the Gu estate. When she first met him, he was 16, already tall and impossibly handsome. Julian's mother had led her to him and told her to call him brother. The small, waifish girl had felt even smaller standing before the 6-foot-tall Julian. He'd merely shot her a cold glance and said nothing. That first year in the Gu home was one of the few truly happy periods of her life. But it didn't last. That winter, during a heavy snowstorm, she'd insisted on going back to school to get a forgotten homework assignment. On the way, the car carrying her and Julian's parents skidded on a patch of black ice. In the final, chaotic moments, Julian's mother had shielded Nina with her own body. After that day, Julian, like her, was an orphan. She would never forget the look in his eyes when he saw his parents' bodies at the morgue. His deep-set eyes were bloodshot, as if stained with her guilt. From that day on, he forbade her from ever calling him brother again. The feeling of a phantom hand tightening around her throat pulled Nina from her memories. She gripped his arms, her voice weak. "I'm sorry. I won't go. Please don't be angry." Other than repeating her apology, she didn't know how else to quell the storm of his hatred. Her recklessness had indirectly caused his parents' deaths. Whatever pain she felt, his was infinitely greater. So no matter how he treated her, she could endure it. She owed him. She owed the Gu family everything. "Sir, there's an urgent call for you." The housekeeper's voice was a godsend, shattering the suffocating silence. Julian's brow twitched in annoyance as he violently shoved her away. Watching him turn to take the call, Nina finally let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She wasn't going out tonight. She pulled out her phone and texted Mia an apology. When Julian hung up, his face was still a thundercloud, but he didn't torment her further. The next day at Columbia, Mia cornered her with a frustrated sigh. "What is with your brother? Is he some kind of 19th century relic? You're 22 and you can't even have dinner with friends. And look at you," Mia continued, gesturing at Nina's simple dress. "You've been wearing this for 2 years. Doesn't he give you any money for clothes?" Nina looked down, saying nothing. Mia, sensing her discomfort, quickly changed the subject. "Hey, internships are coming up. Have you found anything yet?" Nina shook her head. Mia's lips curved into a sly grin. "Why not try for Leohi's family company? You know he's into you. He could solve your internship problem, and you'd get to see each other every day. Who knows, maybe it'll turn into something real." 2 birds, 1 stone. Nina's face flushed crimson as she clapped a hand over Mia's mouth. "Mia, if you keep teasing me, I'm going to ignore you," Mia laughed, pulling her hand away. Okay, fine. If that doesn't work, you can always intern at my dad's company. But I won't be there. I'm aiming for Olympus Corp. They're the biggest tech conglomerate in the city. They just funded a new library for the university, and they're offering 1 internship spot for our class. And their CEO, Julian Gu, is handsome, brilliant, and loaded. He's literally the white whale of Manhattan. Hearing Mia's gushing, an image of Julian's ice-cold face flashed in Nina's mind. She shook her head, muttering to herself, "No way. Julian Gu, he's toxic." "Who did you say is toxic?" A familiar, chilling voice cut through the air, accompanied by an overwhelming wave of pressure. Nina whipped her head around and saw him. There, surrounded by a phalanx of university deans in suits, was Julian Gu, walking slowly toward her. Chapter 3. A girl's secret heart. Nina never imagined she'd run into him on campus. How much had he heard? A wave of cold fear washed over her. Meanwhile, Mia, seeing Julian Gu materialize before her, went beet red and stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. Her family's company was respectable, but next to Olympus Corp, it was a minnow. She never dreamed she would see the legendary CEO, the object of every debutante's fantasy, in the flesh. Julian Gu, the university president, standing nearby, frowned. "Show some respect. This is Mr. Gu." Mia snapped to attention, her voice trembling. Mr. Gu, my apologies." Julian was dressed in a flawlessly tailored black suit that accentuated his powerful physique and commanding presence. He stood out from the crowd, like a panther among pigeons. As he stopped in front of them, both Nina and Mia felt a chill, as if the temperature had dropped. His gaze swept over Nina. "What were you just saying?" Nina scrambled for an explanation. "And nothing, I meant that Olympus Corp is on another level. A student with my mediocre qualifications would be totally out of her depth there. It wouldn't work." A faint, unreadable smile touched his lips. "Oh, a Columbia student, so humble. But how do you know if you don't try?" He turned to the president. "President Zhang, the internship spot we discussed? Let's give it to her." Nina knew instantly that an internship at Olympus Corp would be a special kind of hell. He hated her. He already made her life miserable at home. She couldn't imagine the torments he'd devise for her at the office. But in front of the president, how could she possibly refuse? To anyone else, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. As the procession of suits moved away, Nina's heart sank. Beside her, however, Mia was practically vibrating with excitement. "Nina, did you hear that? You're interning at Olympus, oh my God. That's Olympus. You'll get to see Julian Gu every day, and he seemed so nice." Nice. A bitter smile formed on Nina's lips. After class, Nina was walking alone on a quiet path just off campus. A black Maybach was parked in the distance, looking vaguely familiar. She paid it no mind and quickened her pace, but a hand suddenly clapped her on the shoulder. "Nina," she turned to see Liu He, holding a bouquet of flowers, a bright, sunny smile on his face. "You walk so fast, I was practically jogging to catch up. Mia told me you like flowers. These are for you." The massive bouquet of crimson roses was so vibrant it hurt her eyes. She couldn't accept them. The last boy whose flowers she'd accepted had been forced to drop out of school by Julian. For years, Julian had forbidden her from having friends, let alone dating. He wanted her world to contain only him. He wanted her forever trapped by his side, atoning for the sins of the past. The thought made her recoil. "I can't take these." Leo looked confused. "Why not?" "You don't like roses?" She bit her lip. "It's not that." "Then what is it?" he asked, his smile faltering. "Do you dislike me?" Nina didn't know how to explain. She couldn't linger. She felt a pair of unseen eyes boring into her back, making her skin crawl. "It's not that. I have to go. You should give the flowers to someone else." She turned to leave, but Leo grabbed her arm, his voice insistent. "Nina, do you really want me to give them to someone else? You know how I feel about you." She flinched, pulling away. "Please don't, I have to go." As they struggled, the Maybach that had been parked down the street suddenly pulled up beside them. Through the tinted black window, Nina saw Julian's face, contorted into a mask of pure fury. The horn blared 3 sharp, impatient blasts. Nina pushed Leo away, scrambled to the car, and yanked open the door. "My brother's here to pick me up. Goodbye." As the Maybach sped away, Leo he watched it go, a thoughtful expression on his face. There was only one car like that in the entire country, a custom model that money alone couldn't buy. Since when did Nina have a brother with that kind of power? Chapter 4. His kiss inside the car, the air conditioning was blasting, but the chill emanating from Julian was far colder. He sat beside her in stony silence, his long fingers casually flipping through a contract as if she didn't exist. "Break it off with that boy." Her palms grew slick with sweat. He must have seen everything. Combined with what she'd said about him at school today, the calmer he appeared, the more furious he was. He was incandescent with rage. "There's nothing between us. We're just friends." Julian looked up, his eyes as cold and hard as chips of ice. "Friends? You don't have the right to have friends. I raised you all these years, but not for you to date and socialize. Do you understand?" Her body went rigid. The sweat on her palms felt like tiny needles piercing her skin. She understood all too well. For over a decade, the one emotion Julian had consistently shown her was hatred. After his parents' accident, he hadn't thrown her out. Instead, he'd kept her by his side, a living monument to his grief, an object for his daily torment. For Julian, killing her would have been too easy. What was a quick death compared to the slow, satisfying burn of torturing her soul? They didn't speak again until they reached the Gu estate. The quieter he was, the more terrified Nina became. Just as she was about to break the suffocating silence, Mrs. Zhang, the housekeeper, appeared. "Young master, Miss Nina, dinner is ready. I had the kitchen make your favorite steamed fish." Mrs. Zhang was the oldest servant in the house. She'd been there since Julian was born. No matter how cold he was to the world, he always showed her a sliver of respect. Though neither of them was hungry, they both dutifully took their seats at the dining table. They rarely ate together, but whenever Julian decided to, Nina had to be there, whether she wanted to or not. Seeing Nina picking at her food without appetite, Julian's cold voice cut through the silence. "Starting tomorrow, that Leo he boy won't be appearing in front of you again." Her hand, holding her chopsticks, trembled. A piece of white fish fell onto the table. "What did you do to him?" Her panicked reaction seemed to amuse him. A cruel smile twisted his lips. "What, does it hurt to see him go?" Nina looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, fragile and desperate. "The person you hate is me. Do whatever you want to me. I'm begging you, please don't hurt him." She would grovel like this for another man? Julian slammed his chopsticks down, his rage flaring hotter. "You have no right to beg for him. He dared to covet something that doesn't belong to him. He should be prepared to pay the price." With that, he stormed upstairs, slamming his bedroom door with a thunderous crash. Mrs. Zhang patted Nina's shoulder comfortingly. "Nina, that's just how the young master is. Just coax him a little and he'll be fine. I watched him grow up. I know how hard his life has been. Now it's just the two of you left. You have to rely on each other, understand each other." Rely on each other? He saw her as nothing more than a toy, one that he might discard, but one that no one else was ever allowed to touch. But she had to coax him tonight. She couldn't let an innocent person like Leo get dragged into her mess. Julian always did what he said he would. In New York City, there was nothing he couldn't or wouldn't do. Nina tiptoed upstairs. After knocking several times with no response, she pushed the door open herself. The room was dark and freezing, the cold air seeping out from under the door. Nina fumbled along the wall, searching for the light switch. The moment her fingers found the switch and flipped it on, a powerful force grabbed her, slamming her hard against the wall. She was enveloped in Julian's unique, clean scent. Before she could speak, a pair of warm lips captured hers. She didn't understand. He hated her so much, so why did he keep kissing her? This kiss was rougher than before, punitive. He bit the tip of her tongue, and the sharp pain almost brought tears to her eyes. Just as she was about to lose her footing, his lips moved, trailing down to her collarbone. Suddenly, her body felt weightless. Julian swept her up in his arms and threw her onto the bed. Before Nina could react, his entire body was pressing down on her. Chapter 5. Blind, a jolt of pure panic shot through Nina, clearing her head. Brother in the darkness, she heard his ragged breathing quicken. The next second, he shoved her away with violent force. "You're asking for it," Nina's back slammed into the wall, the impact making her head spin. She fumbled for the lamp, and when the light flickered on, she was met with Julian's bloodshot eyes. "Have I been too good to you all these years? So good you've forgotten your place? If you dare call me brother one more time, I swear I will destroy that boy, Leo He." Tears streamed down her face, whether from fear or the pain of hitting the wall, she couldn't tell. Her first instinct was still to apologize. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. What kind of siblings were they?" They weren't related by blood. Her name wasn't even in the Gu family's official records. At best, she was a long-term houseguest, with less standing than the servants. Julian got out of bed. "Get out," he spat, his voice low and cold, before grabbing a towel and stalking into the bathroom. The sound of the shower started. Nina didn't say a word, just quietly slipped out of his room. His message was clear. He wouldn't do anything drastic to Leo for now. But if she saw him again, all bets were off. Nina slept fitfully, plagued by nightmares. In them, Julian's hands were around her neck, his face twisted like a feral beast's as he demanded to know why she wasn't the one who died in the crash. She was jolted awake the next morning by her phone ringing. Mia's energetic voice was almost piercing. "Nina, did you hear? Something happened to Leohi's family company." The sleep vanished from her eyes. "What?" "I don't have all the details, but I heard his whole family left for Europe. They said they won't be back for a while." Panic seized Nina. "Don't worry yet. Let's wait until we can get in touch with Leo and figure out a plan." "Okay," Mia said. "Gotta go. First day of my internship at my dad's company." Talk later. Hearing that, Nina shot up in bed. Julian had publicly declared she would be interning at Olympus Corp. Today was her first day. She'd almost forgotten. After a rushed shower, she flew downstairs. Mrs. Zhang had breakfast ready. "I don't have time to eat," Mrs. Zhang hurried after her. "You have to eat. The young master ruined his stomach by skipping meals. He was up all night with stomach pain yesterday." He was in pain all night? Nina had a gut feeling it was her fault. But there was no time to dwell on it. She grabbed the sandwich Mrs. Zhang handed her and ran out the door. Outside the estate, the driver glanced in the rearview mirror at Nina, who was anxiously checking her watch. "Sir," he ventured, "Miss Nina seems to be in a hurry. Should we?" Julian's brow furrowed in annoyance. "Don't be nosy." The driver fell silent and started the car. It was half an hour later before Nina finally got a car to take her to Olympus Corp. The private, gated community had no public transport, and the Uber she'd managed to call was held up at the security gate, wasting precious time. By the time she reached the gleaming lobby, she was 30 minutes late. The receptionist, a woman named Holly, looked her up and down with disdain. "You're the intern from Columbia?" Nina, knowing she was in the wrong, managed a meek smile. "Yes, I'm so sorry. I live far away and there was some traffic," Holly scoffed. "Judging by that faded dress, just how far are we talking? Did you commute in from the suburbs?" Nina's face burned. It wasn't that Julian hadn't given her money over the years, but once she felt she was an adult, she couldn't bring herself to accept his charity. Since starting college, she'd relied on part-time jobs for pocket money. This dress had indeed seen better days. Her simple, worn clothes were starkly out of place in the ultra-modern, high-fashion lobby. Seeing her silence, Holly took it as a sign of weakness and pressed her advantage. "So this is what Columbia sends us? Dressed like a pauper, looking like you haven't had a decent meal in your life. Is your family too poor to feed you? I don't know who was blind enough to pick you for an internship at Olympus." Chapter 6. I'm his girlfriend. Nina hung her head, a strange thought crossing her mind. What would Julian do if he knew his subordinate was calling him blind? A second later, as if summoned, Julian appeared with his assistant, Liam, in tow. Holly's arrogant expression instantly melted away, replaced by a sycophantic smile. "Mr. Gu, good morning." Julian was a walking glacier, radiating an Arctic chill. His eyes flickered past Nina and landed on the imperious receptionist. "What's your name?" Hearing the famously aloof CEO address her directly, Holly was so thrilled she could barely speak. "My name is Holly, sir. Holly Lee." He arched an eyebrow, his voice devoid of any emotion. "Go to HR and settle your final paycheck. You don't need to come in tomorrow." With that, he strode toward the private executive elevator without a second glance at either of them. It took Holly a moment to process that she'd been fired. She couldn't understand what she'd done wrong and directed all her fury at Nina. "This is all your fault. You jinx don't get cocky. Let's see how long you last here." Nina remained silent. Holly's firing was entirely on her. With Julian's vindictive personality, hearing himself insulted like that, it was a miracle he hadn't done worse. Soon, another receptionist came to escort her upstairs. After showing Nina to her desk and explaining her duties, she added a final, hushed warning. "The CEO values quiet. No loud noises, ever. And when he's in his office, you don't let anyone in without his explicit permission." "Ever," Nina nodded. Her position was just an intern assistant, meant to support Julian's executive assistant, Liam. In less polite terms, she was a gopher. But because this was Olympus Corp, it was a job people would kill for. After organizing her desk, she remembered what Mrs. Zhang had said that morning about Julian's stomach pain. She went to the break room, warmed a glass of milk, and walked to the CEO's office. She knocked gently. Silence. She didn't dare knock again. As she turned to go back to her desk, she saw a stunningly beautiful and glamorous woman striding confidently toward the office. Nina remembered the warning, "No one gets in without permission." She stepped forward to block the woman's path. "Excuse me, miss, you can't go in." Isabelle Sue paused, slightly taken aback. She'd been to Olympus countless times, and no one had ever dared to stop her. She sized up the plainly dressed Nina and felt a strange flicker of recognition. She'd seen this girl's photo before, in Julian's wallet. A photo in a man's wallet meant something. She'd only caught a glimpse before asking who the girl was, but Julian's eyes had turned murderously cold. "If you ever mention this to anyone, you will regret it more than you can imagine." The memory of that look still sent a shiver down her spine. No, it can't be this girl, Isabelle thought. The kind of person Julian would value so deeply wouldn't be working as a glorified receptionist. Composing herself, she smiled coolly. "I'm Mr. Gu's girlfriend." Julian had many women, but this was the first one Nina had ever heard publicly declare herself his girlfriend. Nina hesitated but held her ground. "I'm sorry, but you'll still have to wait out here. I wasn't notified of your appointment." Now Isabel was annoyed. "Are you serious? I just told you I'm his girlfriend. Does a girlfriend need an appointment to see her boyfriend?" Her raised voice attracted the attention of a few passing employees. Just as Nina was caught in an impossible position, the office door clicked open. Liam, Julian's assistant, stepped out. "Miss Sue, you can go in." Isabel shot Nina a triumphant glare and swept into the office. A moment later, the sound of a woman's playful laughter and coquettish chatter drifted out from behind the closed door. For some reason, Nina's chest felt heavy. Julian, that cold, unapproachable man, could laugh and joke with another woman. But for Nina, seeing him smile was harder than touching the sky. She slowly returned to her desk, the glass of milk still in her hand. The warmth seeped into her palm, but her heart felt like it was turning to ice. Chapter 7. The Irresponsible Brother. As the workday neared its end, a few colleagues organized an impromptu dinner to welcome Nina. She glanced at the CEO's office door, still tightly shut. Isabel Sue hadn't emerged yet, which probably meant she and Julian had plans for the evening. He likely wouldn't be thinking about her. Not wanting to be a spoilsport, Nina readily agreed. The road ahead at Olympus Corp was long. She didn't want to alienate her colleagues on the very first day. At the restaurant, everyone was curious about her. They wanted to know what kind of person could beat out thousands of other students to become the sole Olympus intern. "Nina, I heard the CEO himself went to your university to pick the intern. He's notoriously picky. You must be at the top of your class, right?" She gave an awkward laugh. "Not at all. My grades are pretty average. I'm basically invisible at school." "No way, you're just being modest," another colleague chimed in. "Or maybe you have family connections with our CEO? He pulled some strings for you, didn't he?" Nina shook her head frantically, her face flushing. "No, really, how could I possibly know the CEO? There's nothing like that." Seeing her discomfort, they dropped the subject and focused on encouraging her to eat and drink. Back in the CEO's office, Julian was signing the last contract of the day. Isabel Sue sat beside him, gently massaging his shoulders. "Julian, that new little assistant of yours, she's quite ambitious." The memory of being blocked at the door still irked her. "When I came in today, I saw her hovering outside your door with a glass of hot milk, probably trying to score some points with you." Julian's signing hand paused for a millisecond, a flicker of something unreadable in his cool eyes. He composed himself and finished his signature with a flourish. Putting the pen down, he pinched the bridge of his nose. "You should head home." Isabel was taken aback but managed a smile. "All right. Don't forget you promised to have dinner with me tomorrow." Twilight settled over the city. Julian stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, his handsome face expressionless. Isabel's words echoed in his mind, and a cold smirk touched his lips. Her, trying to score points with him. The girl who looked at him every day with the eyes of a martyr? Unlikely. He picked up his desk phone and buzzed Liam. "Where is she?" Before Liam could answer, his personal cell phone rang. The screen lit up with Nina's name. When he answered, however, it was Mia's voice on the other end. "Hello, is this Nina's brother? Nina's drunk. Her colleagues only had my number, but I don't know where she lives. Could you please come pick her up at Luna Restaurant?" Julian's eyes instantly turned to ice. He hung up the phone and strode out of the office, his face a mask of cold fury. Outside Luna Restaurant, Mia struggled to support a very drunk Nina while yelling at her already dead phone. "You could at least say whether you're coming or not. I've never met such an irresponsible brother. Does he even care if his sister lives or dies?" Nina, barely conscious, dazedly reached up to cover Mia's mouth. "SHH, don't say that you can't." Mia angrily pulled her hand away. "Why not? I'll say what I want. What kind of brother is he? He never takes care of you. How many new dresses have you had in all these years?" Have you ever eaten anything decent? A man that cold and heartless is just asking for bad karma. As the words left her mouth, a brand new Maybach screeched to a halt in front of them. The window rolled down, revealing Julian Gu's stern, chiseled face. Chapter 8. Drunk Mia froze, nearly dropping Nina, who was leaning her full weight on her. Mr. Gu, what are you doing here? Julian got out of the car. He loomed over Mia, then effortlessly scooped Nina into his arms. The series of movements left Mia dumbfounded. As he carried Nina horizontally towards the car, Mia finally snapped out of her shock and grabbed his arm. Mr. Gu, isn't this inappropriate? Julian's brows knitted together, and he shot a warning glance at her hand. Mia immediately let go. Mr. Gu, I know you're Nina's boss, but she's drunk right now. A man and a woman, alone, it's not that I don't trust you, but… She trailed off nervously. No matter how she phrased it, it sounded like she was questioning his character. Julian's thin lips pressed into a hard line. Weren't you the one who called me to pick her up? I called her brother, Mia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Wait, Nina's brother is you. He offered no reply, just a cold frown as he gently placed Nina in the back seat and got in himself. Don't mention what happened today to anyone. Without waiting for Mia's response, he ordered the driver to go. Inside the enclosed space of the car, the alcohol hit Nina with full force. She was a lightweight to begin with, but her colleagues had insisted on toast after toast, and she didn't know how to refuse. Now, she was nearly unconscious. Window, I feel sick. She slumped in the back seat, fumbling blindly for the window controls. Julian impatiently pulled her upright, half cradling her against him. Serves you right. He grabbed a bottle of water, intending to force some into her mouth, but drunk Nina was defiant. She slapped the bottle out of his hand, mumbling incoherently. Bully, you just bully me. The driver in the front seat turned pale. He'd worked for the CEO for years and had never seen anyone dare to treat him this way. Julian gripped her collar, his teeth clenched. Nonsense. Have I ever starved you or left you without clothes? Why do you insist on looking like a charity case for everyone to gossip about? She squirmed irritably, even letting out a cold snort. Julian gritted his teeth, mentally firing every single person who had encouraged her to drink tonight. Julian Gu opened the window. I want the window open. Nina pushed him away and tried to climb over him to open the window herself. In the chaos, her hand brushed against something hard. Before she could react, Julian forcefully pulled her back. Nina, if you move again, I will throw you out of this car. She froze, shrinking into the corner and whimpering softly. She didn't cause any more trouble until the car came to a smooth stop in front of the Gu estate, allowing Julian to carry her out without a struggle. Back in her room, Julian tossed her onto the bed and immediately started unbuttoning her dress. The act sobered Nina up instantly. She clutched the fabric of her dress, her eyes wide with alarm. Don't touch me. You have a girlfriend now. Don't do that to me anymore. A dark light flickered in Julian's eyes. Do what? Chapter 9. Julian's fury. Nina refused to say another word. Her head was pounding as if someone was hammering a nail into her skull. Seeing her disoriented state, Julian didn't press the issue. He withdrew his hands and commanded coldly, "Change your clothes before you sleep. You're filthy." Nina didn't move. She just rolled over and passed out. He let out a frustrated sigh, threw a blanket over her, and then summoned Mrs. Zhang. Tomorrow, get rid of everything in her closet and replace it. Is the Gu family so poor we can't afford clothes or food? She walks around in that raggedy dress every day, embarrassing me. With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, leaving a bewildered Mrs. Zhang staring at the sleeping girl. What had gotten into the young master today? When Nina woke up again, it was already noon the next day. A glance at the clock sent a jolt of panic through her, chasing away all drowsiness. Late on her first day, and now she'd missed half of her second. Did she even want this job? She rushed downstairs, where Mrs. Zhang intercepted her. Miss Nina, the young master said you don't have to go to work today. He's already called in sick for you. Nina stopped in her tracks. Julian had called in for her? After she got wasted last night, Not only had he not lost his temper, he'd even been considerate enough to give her the day off. She didn't know whether to be relieved or worried. For now, she had no choice but to accept it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an unknown number. When she answered, an excited voice came through the line. "Nina, it's me, Leo." A chill ran down her spine. She quickly scanned the room, confirming Julian wasn't home before lowering her voice. "Leo, where are you? What happened to your family?" "It's a long story. I snuck back into the country. I'm at the Bronze Hotel. Can you meet me?" She knew how furious Julian would be if he found out, but she also knew the risk Leo was taking by coming back. It was still early. If she was quick, she could be back before Julian ever found out. She owed Leo too many apologies and explanations. After changing, Nina slipped out. She hurried to the Bronze Hotel, completely oblivious to the black Audi tailing her. She arrived at the room number Leo had given her and knocked once. The door swung open immediately. Before Nina could react, Leo pulled her into a tight embrace, his voice thick with emotion. "Nina, I've missed you so much." She was pinned in his arms, unable to move. "Leo, please don't. Let's just talk." Leo reluctantly let her go. "Nina, did you know? My family had to move abroad because my parents received a warning from Julian Gu. He said if I ever appeared in front of you again, he would bankrupt every company under our family's name." Although she'd suspected Julian was involved, she never imagined he would use such ruthless tactics. Seeing Leo's haggard face, a wave of guilt washed over her. But before she could say anything, a frantic pounding erupted at the door. A terrible premonition gripped her. She let go of Leo's hand and crept to the door. Through the peephole, she saw him. Julian stood there, his face a dark mask of fury, looking like a grim reaper cloaked in ice. Behind him stood several burly bodyguards in black suits. They looked ready for war. Even through the thick wooden door, she could feel the inferno raging in his eyes. "Nina, I'm going to count to 3. Open this door." Now 1, 2, 3, Chapter 10. Nina's heart hammered against her ribs. Panicked, she tried to push Leo further into the room. "Quick, hide if he sees you, you're done for," but it was too late. As she grabbed his hand, Julian swiped a keycard and the door swung open. Their hands flew apart as if electrocuted. His icy eyes, radiating a dangerous aura, landed on her like a physical blow. "Good, very good." He gave a slight gesture, and the bodyguards behind him immediately seized Leo. Nina couldn't imagine what he would do. In a desperate move, she threw herself between Julian and Leo. "Julian, there's nothing going on between us, believe me." The rage in Julian's eyes was like a caged lion, roaring to tear its prey to shreds. "Believe you, you're not worthy." He grabbed Nina and dragged her out. Leo struggled, but one of the bodyguards silenced him with a punch to the gut, forcing him to the ground. The sounds of fists hitting flesh followed them down the hall. Nina's heart was in her throat, but she was powerless. She was shoved violently into the car. Throughout the entire ride back, Julian didn't say a single word. Nina wanted to speak several times, but forced the words back down. She knew that anything she said now would only fuel his rage. When they arrived back at the estate, he dragged her upstairs without a word. She tried to run, but he caught her by the shoulders and, with no trace of mercy, threw her onto the bed. His eyes were as sharp as daggers, his disgust palpable as he looked at her. "Running now? Why didn't you run when that Leo he kid came looking for you?" Nina was terrified. She had never seen him like this. It was as if he had become a different person, someone who wanted to devour her whole. She tentatively reached out to touch his shoulder, but he slapped her hand away with revulsion. "Filth, Nina, you're so filthy. Are you that desperate? Offering yourself up to him on a silver platter. Don't you feel disgusting?" Pain, sharp and searing, tore through Nina's heart. So this is what he thought of her. Vile and dirty. And him? What about him, sleeping with countless other women? Had he ever considered how filthy he was? She turned her head away, unable to look at him. Her defiance only enraged him further. He wrenched her face back to meet his gaze. "You're alive to atone for your sins, you know that? What right do you have to give me attitude?" The dam finally broke. Tears streamed down her face. If you hate me this much, then just kill me." Julian was livid. His face was a thundercloud, his grip on her tightening. "Stop the theatrics. If you really want to die so badly, then do it yourself." He released her, pointing a shaking finger toward the window. "Go on, jump if you have the guts, you die, and we're even." She trembled with rage, struggling to sit up, but then she froze. Julian let out a cold, cruel laugh. "What, you don't dare? Since you don't have the guts to die, then you'll just have to endure it. Everything you're suffering now is exactly what you deserve." She looked up at him. Once, she had admired him, revered him, felt indebted to him. For so many years, he was the only family she had. But now, she finally saw the truth. In his eyes, she was nothing more than a tool for his vengeance. Her presence by his side only brought them both more pain. In that instant, her heart died. If that was the case, then let her be the one to end it all. After this, her debt to him would be paid in full. The window was wide open, the curtains billowing in the wind. Nina took one last look at Julian, then ran toward the window with grim determination. "Goodbye, Julian." Chapter 11, she reached the windowsill and leaped. But in that same instant, Julian lunged forward. In a flash of motion, he grabbed her hand, yanking her back with all his might. The strength seemed to drain from Nina's body, and she collapsed onto the floor, her face ashen. Their eyes met, both filled with a maelstrom of emotions. After a long, tense silence, Julian's hands closed around her neck, his voice cold and merciless. "Nina, who gave you the right to decide whether you live or die? Let me tell you, your entire life is meant for atonement. If you ever dare to pull a stunt like this again, I will make Liu He and Miran pay for it with you." With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Nina didn't move. She lay on the cold floor, staring blankly at the ceiling. She felt like a fish out of water, slowly suffocating as the life was squeezed out of her until nothing was left. The room grew dark. It was Mrs. Zhang who finally opened the door and found her on the floor. "Nina, why are you doing this to yourself?" She helped Nina up, chiding gently. "The young master is furious this time. We servants can't interfere." "Nina, just be a little sweeter, coax him a bit. He has a sharp tongue but a soft heart." Nina curled up under the covers, clearly unwilling to listen anymore. "Mrs. Zhang, can you please leave me alone for a while?" Seeing her mood, Mrs. Zhang couldn't say more. She tucked her in and went downstairs, shaking her head as she closed the door. Those two were a tangled, tragic mess. In the CEO's office, Liam eyed the mountain of cigarette butts in the ashtray before speaking hesitantly. "Sir, about Liu He?" Julian's brow furrowed instantly. "Ship him off to another country. If he ever dares to come back, break his legs. As for the He family, acquire all their assets. I don't want to see or hear anything related to them ever again." "Yes, sir." This time, Julian was truly enraged. For several days, he didn't return to the estate. Every time Mrs. Zhang saw Nina, she would hesitate, wanting to say something. Nina knew what it was. She wanted her to call Julian to make peace. But the situation was a stalemate. Julian didn't want to see her, and she didn't want to see him. Her phone rang several times. Seeing it was Mia, she finally answered. "Nina, are you free today? Can we meet?" She checked the time. "Okay. The coffee shop by campus. See you in half an hour." As she was leaving, the bodyguard seemed uneasy. Normally, Nina would have patiently explained, but today she had no patience for it. "I'm meeting a friend. If you want to watch me, you can follow from a distance, but stay out of my sight." She walked out, hailed a cab, and headed to their meeting spot. When she arrived at the coffee shop, Mia was already there, rushing to greet her. "Nina, what on earth is going on?" Chapter 12. It had been a while since Mia had been able to reach Nina, not since that night she'd gotten drunk. That was also the night she discovered that the oppressive brother she often complained about was none other than Julian Gu. She never knew that Nina, who always seemed so simple and modest, had a brother with such immense power. Nina sighed, sinking into a chair by the window. "I'm sorry, Mia. I didn't mean to hide it from you. It's just his identity is complicated, and our relationship is even more so. I didn't know how to explain it, but I never intended to deceive you." Mia, ever straightforward, gently pinched Nina's cheek in mock punishment, then broke into a forgiving smile. I know what kind of person you are. Don't worry, I'm not mad, I'm just confused. The Gu family is so wealthy, so why are you? Nina looked down. I know what you're asking. Why my clothes and expenses are so frugal, right? Julian and I aren't actually siblings. My parents passed away 10 years ago and his parents took me in. But then they died in an accident, and after that, it was just the two of us. Our relationship isn't good. He raised me, and I'm grateful for that. How could I feel comfortable spending his money? So for years, I've been trying to work and save up so I can pay back everything he's spent on me. Mia was stunned. She had never imagined that the gentle, quiet Nina had such a dramatic backstory, but something still puzzled her. Nina, you say your relationship with him is bad, but I get the feeling he really cares about you. At school, he gave you the Olympus internship just because of one thing you said. When you were drunk, he came to get you immediately. And from what I saw, the concern in his eyes for you was no less than mine. Julian cares about her. The thought flickered in her mind for a second before she forcibly extinguished it. For all these years, he had hated her to the bone. How could he possibly care? Nina shook her head firmly. You don't understand. It's not what you think. By the way, how is Leo? Have you been in touch with him? At the mention of Leo, Mia hesitated. He's not doing well. I heard he was badly injured, and all of the He family's assets have been acquired by Olympus Corp. What did he do to offend Julian Gu so badly? Why would he be so ruthless? Nina didn't know how to explain. Should she tell her it was because of Julian's twisted, possessive control? But if Mia knew about their abnormal relationship, would she see her differently? Mia was her only friend. She couldn't bear to lose her. Chapter 13, Mia, please don't ask. I'm not really sure either. Seeing Nina's troubled expression, Mia didn't press further. After finishing their coffee, they went their separate ways. When Nina returned to the Gu estate, she saw Julian's usual Maybach parked in the driveway. He was back. She walked inside and saw a woman sitting primly on the living room sofa. It was Isabelle Sue, the woman from the office. Her striking beauty was unforgettable. Isabelle was clearly surprised to see Nina in the Gu residence. Oh, aren't you Julian's personal assistant? How personal does this job get? Their last encounter had not been pleasant, and her tone was dripping with disdain. Nina didn't answer, her eyes scanning the living room. Julian was nowhere in sight. Good. Seeing him would just be awkward. She put down her bag and started for the stairs, but Isabelle's sharp voice stopped her. Hold on, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf? Nina was already in a foul mood. This wasn't the office. She had no obligation to be respectful to Isabelle. Just because you're talking doesn't mean I have to answer. Isabelle, taken aback by the retort, let out a cold laugh. Well, aren't you a sharp-tongued one? Looks like Julian treats you well, even bringing you home. Don't you know that I am his official girlfriend? Have you no shame? Nina had no interest in arguing with a woman like this. Over the years, Julian had brought home more than a few women, but none had been as brazenly arrogant as Isabelle. The others, even if they didn't know her exact relationship with Julian, could see she was comfortable in the house and knew her status was unusual. They had always been careful not to provoke her. But this Isabelle seemed to have a personal vendetta against her from the moment they met. Nina shot her a cold look and bypassed her, heading for the stairs. But before she could take a step, a hand grabbed her arm. I'm talking to you. Who gave you permission to go upstairs? Julian is working up there. Are you trying to seduce him? Annoyed, Nina tried to shake her off, but Isabelle's grip was surprisingly strong. In the struggle, they both lost their balance and tumbled sideways. Nina, who was in front, landed directly on top of Isabelle. She was fine, but Isabelle seemed to have taken the brunt of the fall. The commotion brought the kitchen staff running. Mrs. Zhang saw Nina on the floor and rushed to help her up. Miss Nina, are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere? Isabelle, who had been furious, froze when she heard Mrs. Zhang call Nina Miss. Her expression changed instantly. Miss, what is your relationship with Julian? Chapter 14. Nina didn't bother to explain. She stood up with Mrs. Zhang's help. I'm fine, Mrs. Zhang. I'm going upstairs. I don't feel like eating tonight, so please don't call me for dinner. Without another glance at Isabel, she walked upstairs. Isabel's back ached from the fall. She slowly got to her feet, watching Nina disappear up the grand staircase, and turned her attention to Mrs. Zhang. Mrs. Zhang, what is her relationship with Julian? I heard you call her Miss. I didn't know Julian had a sister. Mrs. Zhang, who had always doted on Nina, was already displeased with Isabel for laying hands on her. Her tone was frosty. Miss Su, didn't you say you were the young master's girlfriend? He didn't even tell you this. I call her Miss because she is a member of the Gu family. As for what relationship the young lady of our house has with the young master, you can figure that out for yourself. With that, she turned and led the other servants back to the kitchen, leaving Isabel standing there, her face a mixture of red and white. It was almost evening when Julian finally came downstairs. Isabel immediately rushed to his side. The last few hours had been agonizing. If she had truly angered Julian's sister, it would be disastrous for her future prospects of marrying into the Gu family. Everyone knew Julian was a self-made man with no other living relatives. If he had a sister, her opinion would undoubtedly carry immense weight. Julian, you never told me you had a sister. Julian's expression instantly cooled. What about it? She linked her arm through his, her voice taking on a coquettish tone. If I had known, I would have brought her a gift. I came empty-handed. Now her first impression of me will be terrible. Julian's lips thinned into a line, his eyes still a cold, bottomless abyss. Don't worry about her. You don't need to win her favor. Isabel couldn't decipher his thoughts. His mind was always an enigma, and she didn't dare to guess. They sat down at the dining table where Mrs. Zhang had already set the places. Nina's seat was conspicuously empty. Julian's brow tightened. In a neutral tone, he instructed Mrs. Zhang, tell her to come down for dinner. Mrs. Zhang shot a pointed look at Isabel. When Miss Nina came home, she was pushed to the floor by Miss Su and took a fall. She said she has no appetite and won't be having dinner. This Mrs. Zhang, embellishing the story for dramatic effect in front of Julian, as if Nina skipping dinner was her fault. A chill ran down Isabel's back. She surreptitiously glanced at Julian's expression and said meekly, I accidentally bumped into Nina. I didn't realize she was so upset she wouldn't even eat. It's my fault. I should go up and apologize to her. Julian waved a dismissive hand. Who does she think she is, acting like a princess? Mrs. Zhang, go get her. Chapter 15, Mrs. Zhang hesitated for a moment but complied, heading upstairs. She knew the young master's temper well. Since he had given the order in front of Isabel, Nina would have to come down, whether she wanted to eat or not. When the knock came, Nina was lying in bed, staring into space. She wasn't surprised to see Mrs. Zhang. Mrs. Zhang, I really don't want to eat. Can you just let me rest? Mrs. Zhang looked troubled. Nina, please just come down. It was the young master who sent me to get you. You know his temper. Nina sighed and buried her face in her pillow. After a moment, she relented. I understand, Mrs. Zhang. I'll be down in a minute. If Julian had demanded it, she couldn't refuse, and she didn't want to make things difficult for Mrs. Zhang. Despite not wanting to see Julian, and especially not wanting to see Isabel, she had to brave the ordeal. When she arrived in the dining room, Julian and Isabel were already eating. Julian didn't even look up, but Isabel greeted her warmly. Nina, I'm so sorry about earlier. I accidentally bumped into you. Are you hurt? The speed of her personality shift was like watching a performance. Nina frowned. She didn't reply, simply taking her seat. The atmosphere grew awkward. Isabel picked up a large shrimp and placed it in Nina's bowl with a placating smile. Here, Nina, have some shrimp. Nina glanced at it, then picked up her chopsticks and, without a word, moved the shrimp from her bowl to the discard plate beside her. Mrs. Zhang, could I have a clean bowl, please? Even the most thick-skinned person would have been mortified. Isabel's face fell, and she looked to Julian for help. He finally put down his chopsticks, his cold gaze pinning Nina. Don't take it too far. Nina's grip on her chopsticks tightened. She looked up, her eyes flashing with defiance. I'm allergic to shellfish. Didn't you know, brother? She bit down on the word brother, her voice dripping with resentment. For years, she had been meek and submissive, never daring to speak to him like this. A dark fire ignited in Julian's eyes, the rage in his chest threatening to erupt. Fine. Excellent. All this rebellion over a man. If you don't want to eat, then get out. Who are you putting on this show for? Have I been too lenient with you? His words were heavy with menace, instantly plunging the room's temperature to freezing. Even Isabel, the outsider, could sense that something was deeply wrong. On the surface, he seemed to be defending her, but she felt as though the two of them were engaged in some private war, trading barbs with no restraint. This dinner table had become a battleground, and she was trapped in the crossfire. "All right, Julian, don't be upset with her," Isabel said, trying to de-escalate. "It was my fault. I didn't know Nina couldn't eat seafood. If it weren't for maintaining her image as the understanding girlfriend, she would never have swallowed her pride like this." Chapter 16. The meal was a miserable affair for all three of them. Isabel was caught in the middle, unable to offend either party in front of Julian. She still didn't understand Nina's true standing in his heart and had to maintain a facade of civility. After dinner, Nina went straight upstairs. She couldn't stand Isabel's hypocrisy, nor did she want to face Julian. Later that night, as she was drifting off to sleep, she saw a figure standing in her doorway. She was instantly wide awake, a cold sweat breaking out on her back. When she realized who it was, she sat up abruptly. "Brother, what are you doing in my room in the middle of the night? Aren't you afraid Miss Sue will find out?" Julian let out a cold snort and sat down on the edge of her bed. She flinched away instinctively, but he reached out and pulled her into his arms, pinning her against him. "What are you hiding from? You weren't so shy with Leohi, were you?" In the darkness, she couldn't see his expression, but she could feel the searing heat of his body and the warmth of his breath on her face. The air was filled with his unique, clean scent, but the thought that he might have just come from Isabel's bed made her stomach churn. She pushed her hands between them, and an involuntary gagging sound escaped her throat. The next second, Julian's hand tightened around her neck. "What did you just do?" Nina felt like she was suffocating. She turned her head away in disgust. "You're disgusting." Julian's grip tightened, and a cruel laugh escaped him. "More disgusting than you. Eagerly offering yourself up to another man, and now you're pretending to be virtuous." So this was the kind of person she was in his heart. For all these years, he had controlled her so tightly. She had never even been touched by another man, and now he was throwing these humiliating accusations at her. She trembled with rage, the words tumbling out of her mouth. "That's right, I'd let him touch me willingly. He's the best man I've ever met. He's 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 times better than you." Julian's face contorted in a mask of fury. "Good. Excellent," he hissed. "In that case, you will never see him again for the rest of your life." With that, he crushed his lips against hers. Nina fought back instinctively, but he pinned her wrists above her head, rendering her immobile. "Aren't you afraid I'll scream and bring Isabel running?" she snarled, her eyes glaring at him. "If she saw you doing this to your own sister, what do you think she would say?" A cold smile played on Julian's lips. He pressed them against her neck, his words a dangerous whisper. "Go ahead and scream. I don't care. In fact, you should scream loud enough for everyone to hear. Besides," he added, "are you my sister?" Nina stopped struggling. She was like a fish on a chopping block, helpless as Julian methodically broke her down. "Julian," she whispered, her voice breaking, "what will it take for you to finally let me go?" Chapter 17. She didn't know what to do anymore. For years, she had walked on eggshells, every step like treading on a razor's edge. And still, she had managed to infuriate him. Julian's eyes were bloodshot. Ignoring her struggles, his kisses ignited fires across her skin. Her body went rigid with tension, an uncontrollable trembling seizing her. "No, please, don't do this." Her trembling voice gave him a moment's pause, but in the end, desire won out. Afterward, Nina curled into a ball in the corner of the bed, motionless. What was this? What was their relationship? Julian was already up and dressed. He pulled a bank card from his pocket and tossed it onto the bed in front of her. "This is an empty card. When you've deposited $5 million into it, you can leave. Don't say I never gave you a chance. $5 million. With her situation, saving that much would be impossible. It would take a lifetime. This wasn't a chance. It was just another way of saying he would never let her go. As if reading her mind, Julian's cold voice cut through the silence again. If you want to earn it faster, there's a way. Sleep with me 100,000 a time. If you're accommodating, 5 million should be easy enough, don't you think? A sharp pain lanced through her heart. 100,000 a time. What did he take her for? Nina knew he was just trying to humiliate her. He knew she was too proud to stoop to such means. But this time, she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. She reached out and clutched the bank card in her hand, her watery eyes meeting his. All right, but you have to keep your word, brother. He seemed surprised by her quick agreement. A cold smirk touched his lips. When have I ever broken my word? And one more thing, stop calling me brother. It'll cost you 10,000 each time. Nina rolled over, her back to him, her voice surprisingly soft. Got it. The next morning, Nina came downstairs to find that Julian and Isabel were already gone. Mrs. Zhang was bustling around, setting out breakfast. Nina, come have some dumplings. Your favorite, mushroom and pork. After not eating last night and being tormented by Julian for hours, she was famished. Nina, the young master gave instructions. From now on, the driver will take you to and from work. Nina's eyes drifted to the driver standing near the garage as she ate her dumplings. Mrs. Zhang continued to chatter. Nina, the young master is truly good to you. Look, he's arranged for his personal driver to take you just for your convenience. And the other day, when he saw your clothes were old, he had me order you a whole new wardrobe. The young master may be cold on the outside, but he cares for you. Chapter 18 good to her? Nina gave a bitter smile. The driver wasn't for her convenience, he was a warden. She knew that much. Losing her appetite, she took a few more bites, changed her clothes, and went out. Just before arriving at the office building, Nina saw the morning rush of people pouring into the lobby. She turned to the driver. Uncle Zhao, you can drop me here. I'll walk the rest of the way. Today, the driver was using Julian's usual Maybach. Most people at the office wouldn't recognize it, but the car was too ostentatious for her comfort. She didn't want to attract any attention. After a 5-minute walk, she took the elevator up to her floor. When she appeared in the office, several heads turned. They were used to seeing her in a faded, washed-out sundress. Today, she was wearing a brand new designer suit. The people at Olympus Corp were worldly. A single glance told them her outfit was worth upwards of 5 figures. Her sudden transformation sparked suspicion. Nina felt her cheeks burn. Every single piece of clothing in her closet had been replaced. She had tried to pick the simplest outfit, but it still drew stares. She felt like she was under a microscope as she quietly made her way to her desk. The entire morning passed without a single sign of Julian. Nina had little work to do and found herself browsing job search websites. The salary at Olympus was good, but earning 5 million was still a distant dream. She'd agreed to Julian's terms out of spite, but could she really sell her body? Once she had the 5 million, she could leave the Gu estate, leave him. Forever. Her debt would be paid. The job listings were mostly full-time positions. The only part-time work available was for waitressing or retail. She wasn't sure if she could get away with such a public-facing job under Julian's watchful eye. Lost in thought, she didn't notice someone approach until a hand lightly tapped her shoulder. She jumped, startled. The person, a colleague named Clara, was holding a cup of coffee. Nina's sudden movement caused the entire cup to spill down her shoulder. "Oh my God, Nina, are you okay?" "I am so sorry," Clara panicked. She had just wanted Nina to help her with some faxes, not this. She knew the suit was expensive. If Nina asked her to pay for it, it would hurt. It's fine," Nina said, dabbing at her shoulder with a tissue and gathering her papers. "It was my fault for overreacting. I'll just go clean up in the restroom. Leave the documents on my desk. I'll fax them for you later." This was the first time she'd worn this suit, and the coffee stain was probably permanent. The stain was on her back shoulder, so Nina went into a stall, took off the jacket, and tried to blot it with a damp paper towel. The door to the next stall opened, and she heard two women washing their hands at the sink. "You know that new intern?" "Chapter 19, of course," the other replied. "You see how she acts, all soft and fragile. She's a total wolf in sheep's clothing." "I know, right? We were all fooled by her innocent act. A few days ago, she was wearing rags to make us let our guard down, and now look at her. So manipulative." "Exactly. She probably snagged some sugar daddy. Otherwise, how could she afford Chanel?" "That makes sense. These college girls are all the same. They're not interested in working hard, just in hooking a rich man." "Totally. How else do you think she got an internship at Olympus?" "It was that pretty face, for sure." The two of them giggled, their voices fading as they left the restroom. Nina sat on the toilet in the stall, her heart sinking. She had thought she might be able to make friends at the office. It seemed that was just a fantasy, but it didn't matter. Once she earned enough money, she was leaving this place and going somewhere she would never have to see Julian Gu again. Friends here were irrelevant. Nina put her jacket back on, dried it as best she could under the hand dryer, and walked out. In the 20 minutes she was gone, a mountain of files had appeared on her desk. She stared at it, bewildered. "Nina, get these files organized by the end of the day and fax them to the corresponding emails." The department head, a woman named Laura Vance, dropped another thick stack on top of the already towering pile. Nina remembered her job description. She was Liam's assistant. She was only supposed to handle tasks he assigned her. While she sometimes helped other colleagues with printing and faxing, this was not her primary responsibility. "Miss Vance, all of this has to be done today. I have other work to do. I might not be able to finish on time." She had phrased it as politely as she could, but Laura's expression soured. "What? Is the work I assign you not work? Whether you can finish on time is your problem. I don't care about the process, only the result." Nina was speechless. She wanted to argue but held her tongue. Sensing her defiance, Laura scoffed and muttered as she walked away, "Don't think that just because you have a rich sponsor, you're above doing actual work. If you were that well off, you'd be at home playing the trophy wife, not wasting time in an office." Even with her good temper, Nina couldn't take it anymore. She shot up from her chair and confronted Laura. "Miss Vance, I suggest you watch your mouth." The commotion brought the office to a standstill. All eyes were on them. Laura had disliked Nina from the start. Being publicly challenged was the last straw. Chapter 20, "Nina, I'm warning you, be respectful. This is an office. What did I say that was so offensive? Did I mention you by name? Or are you just so eager to claim the title that you're outing yourself?" Nina's face burned with humiliation. She had never been good at arguing. When she was little, and Julian pushed her too far, the worst she could manage was a whispered meanie. She had nothing in her arsenal for a confrontation like this. All she could do was glare. "You were obviously talking about me. Are you a coward, or will you admit it? Apologize to me," whispers broke out among the onlookers, but no one intervened. Laura smirked. "Who do you think you are, demanding an apology from me? Do the work or get out. Olympus doesn't carry dead weight." Nina's face went pale with anger, but she couldn't form a coherent rebuttal. Laura, done with her, turned to leave, but Nina grabbed her arm. "Apologize, or you're not going anywhere. I'm warning you. Don't touch me. You think I'm scared of you just because you have connections." Let go. As they struggled, the main office door swung open. The room fell silent. Everyone scrambled back to their desks, pretending to work. Laura instantly released Nina and lowered her head. "Mr. Gu," Julian's face was a mask of ice. His gaze swept over Nina's disheveled and flustered state, and his brows drew together in a sharp line. "This is a place of business. Conduct yourselves accordingly." He then shot a look at Laura. "If you can't manage your subordinates, then you're not fit to manage at all." Without another glance at Nina, he strode into his office. The crowd dispersed. Liam shot Nina a sympathetic look before following Julian inside. A wave of overwhelming despair washed over Nina. He hadn't even asked what happened. He had just assigned all the blame to her. The tears she had been holding back finally fell. She returned to her desk and began sorting through the mountain of papers, her vision blurred. What had she been hoping for? That Julian would defend her, that he would put Laura in her place. He hated her more than anyone else in this room, and a man as proud and aloof as him would never get involved in the petty squabbles of his underlings. It was foolish of her to hope that things might be different now that they had been intimate. Inside the CEO's office, Liam hesitated before speaking to the engrossed Julian. "Sir, I heard some things around the office today. I'm not sure if I should mention them." A thin layer of frost seemed to cover Julian's features. He quickly signed a contract. "Spit it out, don't waste my time." Only then did Liam dare to speak. "It's about Miss Jiang. People don't know her background, and with her recent change in wardrobe, there's been a lot of speculation." "They're saying," Liam trailed off, gauging Julian's reaction. Chapter 21, Julian's expression remained neutral, but his brow furrowed slightly. "Continue." "They're saying Miss Jiang has questionable morals, that she's likely being kept by a wealthy man, and that her internship here was probably arranged by this benefactor." Liam kept glancing at Julian's face, afraid a single word might set him off. He was only relaying what he'd heard, and if it weren't for how pitiful Nina had looked, he wouldn't have bothered. To his surprise, Julian didn't get angry. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "They're not wrong. She is being kept by a wealthy man." Liam understood Julian's meaning, but felt compelled to defend Nina. "Sir, the argument just now between Miss Jiang and Miss Vance was about this. Laura has always been one to kiss up and kick down. She looked down on Miss Jiang at first, and now she's convinced she used other means to get ahead." Julian finally looked up, his face still a cold mask. "Liam, you seem to be paying a lot of attention to Nina." The comment was a warning shot. The office didn't know the real relationship between Julian and Nina, but Liam did. "Sir, please don't misunderstand. I just saw Miss Jiang being bullied, and then getting the cold shoulder from you. I felt sorry for her, so I thought I'd say a few words on her behalf." Julian's brow tightened further. Liam quickly plastered on a smile. "You must be busy, sir. I'll go get you some coffee." He beat a hasty retreat. Julian was a powder keg right now, and Liam had no intention of being caught in the blast. Outside the office, Nina sat at her desk, staring blankly at the mountain of files. To finish all this, she'd be here until at least 10 tonight. She hadn't eaten all afternoon and was starving, but the thought of the unfinished work killed her appetite. The office slowly emptied until she was the only one left. A single light illuminated the vast, empty floor, making it feel lonely and desolate. She rubbed her arms, a chill creeping over her. She had to admit she was scared. She'd always been afraid of the dark, especially after witnessing her adoptive parents' deaths. For a long time after that, she couldn't sleep through the night. She wouldn't dare go to Julian, so she would secretly leave her bedroom door ajar. The sliver of light from his room down the hall was the only thing that gave her a small sense of security. Nina glanced toward the CEO's office. A thin line of light was visible under the door, but it was silent inside. Just knowing he was there made her feel a little less afraid. Chapter 22, it was nearly 11 by the time she finished. As she left, the light in the CEO's office was still on. She didn't think much of it. The driver was already waiting for her downstairs. "Miss, why are you so late tonight?" He opened the car door for her, chattering away. "Your bosses are something else, making a young lady like you work so late. They don't even think about whether you'll get home safe. It's a good thing you have a driver. What would other girls do?" "Other girls wouldn't be as unlucky as me," Nina thought wryly. "It's okay, Uncle Zhao. I'd like to get something to eat before we go back. Can we drive to the area near my old campus?" Uncle Zhao quickly shook his head. "I can't do that, miss, it's already so late. If you get back any later, the young master will be angry." She smiled. "It's fine, he's still at the office. We'll eat quickly and head straight home. We'll make it." "No, the young master went home a long time ago. He told me to wait for you. Julian was already gone." Then the light in his office. Nina froze for a moment. After a second, she rationalized that Liam must have forgotten to turn it off. She wouldn't be foolish enough to think Julian had left it on for her because he knew she was scared. The car pulled up to the estate. As Nina got out, she saw Julian's other car already parked in the garage. She didn't know when he'd left. Maybe while she was buried in her work, or maybe while she was crying in the restroom. Despite the late hour, Mrs. Zhang came out to greet her and insisted on making her a bowl of noodles with fried eggs. Seeing her eat with a good appetite, Mrs. Zhang couldn't help but speak. "Nina, you should make up with the young master. He really does care about you. Look, he had the fridge stocked with all kinds of imported fruits, all for you." Nina almost laughed out loud. For her, Julian was that considerate. He was just a picky eater, demanding the best in everything from food to clothes. In all her years at the estate, she could count on one hand the number of times she'd taken fruit for herself. Nina finished her noodles in a few quick bites and hurried upstairs to shower. After such a long day, all she wanted was to wash up and collapse into bed. The warm water felt heavenly against her skin. She stood under the shower for a full 30 minutes before turning it off and wrapping herself in a towel. It was only then that she realized she'd forgotten to bring her pajamas into the bathroom. "It's late," she thought, "and it's my own room." She cinched the towel tightly around herself and stepped out. She had left only a small bedside lamp on. As she walked to the closet, she saw a figure sitting on the sofa. Julian, dressed in silk pajamas, was lounging with his long legs crossed, watching her. In the dim light, her bare arms and long legs were clearly visible. A droplet of water trickled down her ankle, looking both sensual and inviting. Chapter 23, Nina's face instantly flushed the color of a ripe tomato. She clutched her towel tighter and hissed, "I didn't know you had a penchant for voyeurism." Julian arched an eyebrow. "This is my house. I can go wherever I please." She couldn't believe his audacity. Deciding it was pointless to argue, she grabbed a random dress from the closet and turned to flee back into the bathroom. But in that instant, Julian was on his feet. A long arm shot out and wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him. He had just showered, and the clean scent of his body wash filled the air. Through the thin towel, she could feel the heat radiating from both their bodies. The memory of how he had publicly humiliated her that day still stung. She pushed against his chest resentfully. "Let go of me," but Julian was in a defiant mood. "And if I don't," Nina gritted her teeth. "Fine. A business opportunity just fell into my lap. Why would I pass it up? 100,000 a pop. It's a good deal for me." Her words made Julian's face darken instantly, but his grip on her waist didn't loosen. Well, Nina, you've gotten bold, haven't you? Daring to talk back to me." She could barely breathe, but her anger gave her courage. She had never been a weak person. It was only after she moved in with the Gus, after the accident, that her fiery spirit had been tempered. When she was little and Julian made her mad, she would hide in the garden, throwing pebbles into the pond and muttering, "Meanie, Julian is a big meanie." As she grew older, her fear of him intensified. In all their years of fighting, he had never laid a hand on her. She, on the other hand, remembered one time when she was so furious she had bitten him. He had been so angry he didn't speak to her for a month. In the end, it was she who had to trail after him with a pitiful expression, apologizing day after day, until he finally forgave her. Nina bit her lip, her eyes still blazing with defiance. "Are you going to let me earn this money or not? If yes, then get on with it. If not, then let me go change. This is uncomfortable." Her words would have soured any mood. She had managed to paint him as a lewd, pathetic John. Julian forcefully pushed her away, his voice still icy. "Don't you dare put on airs with me. If you want to earn the money, then you'd better fix your attitude. Otherwise, you'll never get your 5 million. With that, he stormed out, leaving Nina staring at the empty doorway. Chapter 24, it took her a moment to realize what she had just done. She had thrown a tantrum at Julian Gu. Their relationship was anything but normal. Calling it a paid arrangement was more dignified than the truth. And she had the audacity to get angry and provoke him. Her goal was to get the 5 million and leave him forever. Nina's head throbbed. $5 million. The number was astronomical. Lost in thought, she somehow fell asleep. She didn't wake up until noon the next day, when Mrs. Zhang came to get her for lunch. If it hadn't been for her, she might have slept all afternoon. Luckily, it was the weekend, so she didn't have to face Julian's wrath for being late to work. Her phone rang. It was Mia. "Nina, you know how you asked me to keep an eye out for part-time jobs for you? I found one." Nina's spirits lifted instantly. "Really? Where? I'll come check it out right now. It's at La Cave Privé. I'll wait for you here." Hurry up. La Cave Privé, an exclusive wine cellar, wasn't far from Olympus Corp. Nina didn't ask the driver to take her. Showing up for a part-time job interview with a personal chauffeur seemed wrong. When she arrived, Mia waved her over. "Nina, over here." She hurried over, smiling at Mia and greeting the woman standing beside her. "Hello, I'm Nina." Mia introduced the woman in the tailored suit. "Nina, this is the manager, Susan Lay. I've already told her what you're looking for. You'll be in charge of logging clients' stored wines and giving tour and explanations. You can work weekends and evenings after your internship." Nina quickly thanked her. "Thank you so much, Miss Lee." Susan was warm and approachable. "Please, none of that. You're Mia's friend, call me Susan. Mia told me you're in urgent need of money. Don't worry, I'll make sure you get the highest possible hourly rate." Nina was embarrassed. "Thank you, Susan. You're both being too kind." Susan smiled. "Not at all. Any friend of Mia's is like a little sister to me. Feel free to look around. I have to get back to work." She gracefully walked away on her high heels. Once she was gone, Nina pulled Mia to a nearby table. "Mia, how do you know her? This place is famous." Mia gave her a mysterious smile. "Susan used to work for my dad. This is a small favor. But why do you suddenly need money so badly? You could just ask Julian. Your family is loaded. Why do you need to work part-time? Look at your outfit. It's worth at least 5 figures. Chapter 25. Nina's expression was complicated. "It's a long story. Julian's money isn't my money. He bought me these clothes, but they're not really mine. I could never ask him for money, and he would never give it to me." There was more she couldn't say. The truth was, not just her clothes, but she herself, now belonged to Julian. Mia wasn't one to pry. Seeing Nina's reluctance, she didn't press. "Well, don't worry about working here. The pay is good. It's not Olympus Corp level, but it's more than enough to cover your expenses." Nina nodded. "You have to keep this a secret." "Don't tell anyone." Mia playfully pinched her arm. "Of course. Who would I tell? I'm terrified of your iceberg brother." After some friendly banter, they decided to go shopping. Nina usually hated going out. Julian always had someone follow her, as if he was afraid she'd run away. She despised the feeling of being watched. But today, with Mia, she was happy to go. They tried on clothes at several boutiques before deciding on a place for dinner. Mia insisted on going into a chic-looking French restaurant. Nina glanced at the opulent decor and knew it would be expensive. She had some money now, but she needed to save it for her future. As if reading her mind, Mia said, "Don't worry about it. This one's on me?" Nina quickly waved her hands. "No way, you can't pay every time. Let me treat you. It's a thank you for finding me such a great job." Mia beamed, linking her arm through Nina's and agreeing. They were led to a table by the window. As they crossed the main dining room, they both saw a familiar face. Julian, dressed in a simple but impeccably tailored black suit, looked sharp and clean. Across from him sat another man who was also strikingly handsome. Unlike Julian's mature and steady presence, this man had an air of flamboyant confidence. Talk about bad luck. Nina grabbed Mia's arm and tried to steer them away, but as she turned, she bumped right into a waiter. A wine glass shattered on the floor, the sound piercing the quiet, elegant atmosphere. The waiter apologized profusely, which only made Nina feel worse. It's okay. It was my fault for not looking." In that moment, Julian's gaze fell on them. Nina didn't want to engage with him. She pretended not to see him and tried to pull Mia away. But a deep, cool voice from behind them stopped them in their tracks. "Nina, come here." Chapter 26. His voice seemed to have a magnetic pull, forcing Nina to turn around. She and Mia reluctantly walked over to their table. "Sit, join us." Nina's eyes widened. A cold sweat broke out on her palms as she gripped Mia's hand. What game was he playing now? She couldn't understand him at all. In public, he usually acted as if he didn't even know her. Why was he inviting her to eat with them in front of a stranger? The man sitting across from him finally spoke. Mr. Gu, and this is. His eyes held a playful glint, as if he had just caught Julian in a compromising position. Nina jumped in before Julian could answer. Hello, I'm Mr. Gu's sister. My name is Nina. At her words, the temperature around Julian dropped to freezing. His lips curved into a chilling smile. Kyan Jai, the other man, observed the strange tension between them and simply smiled. So Mr. Gu has a sister I'd never heard. Julian's tone was sharp. Neither had I until today. His loaded words made Nina's heart pound. She quickly tried to change the subject. What a coincidence, seeing you here. This is my friend, Mia. Have you ordered yet? If not, I'll go ahead. She was so nervous her voice trembled. She shoved a menu at Mia, desperately signaling her to order something. Mia had never been in a situation like this. She randomly picked 2 dishes and then started making frantic eye contact with Nina. Julian and Kyan were both seasoned players in the business world. Every word they exchanged seemed to flash with a cold, metallic light, making it impossible for the 2 girls to keep up. Nina felt a kick under the table. She looked up to see Mia pointing at her phone. She unlocked it and saw a text from Mia. Nina, this is so awkward. We need to escape. Nina quickly typed back under the table. I know, think of something. They both sat there, on pins and needles. Mia's eyes darted around, and then an idea struck her. Oh, my stomach suddenly hurts so much, Nina. I don't think I can eat. Can you take me to the hospital? She had been perfectly fine just moments ago. A sudden stomachache was highly suspicious. But Nina knew what she was doing and had to play along. What's wrong? Is it because of the ice cream we had earlier? She stood up and helped Mia, feigning concern. Then she turned to the 2 gods at the table and apologized. I'm so sorry. My friend isn't feeling well. We won't be able to join you for dinner. Please enjoy your meal. I'm going to take her to the hospital. Kyan Jai smiled. I can have my driver take you. Your friend looks quite serious. Chapter 27, the last thing they wanted was his driver. Kyan's offer made both of them break out in a cold sweat. No, that's okay, we can manage on our own. With that, Nina practically dragged Mia out of the restaurant, unable to resist a quick glance back at the men they were leaving behind. Mia dug her nails into Nina's arm. Don't look back, do you want to get caught? The sharp pain in her arm jolted Nina back to her senses, and she hurried Mia out of the restaurant and down the street. They didn't stop until they were a safe distance away, finally letting out a collective sigh of relief. Mia glared at her. What is the deal with you and Julian Gu? Why are you so scared of him? It's not like he's going to eat you. Nina threw her hands up. Aren't you scared of him? Mia pouted. I was just looking out for you. Nina smiled and linked her arm through Mia's. All right, I know you're the best. They looked like they were in for a long dinner. Why don't we just grab something near campus? Mia's face lit up. Yes, I haven't had street food from around campus in forever. I'm craving spicy hot pot. I'm going to eat until I burst. Okay, my treat. Mia was so easy to please. Despite being a true heiress, she had no airs about her. After dinner, they went their separate ways. The moment Nina saw the familiar Maybach parked in the driveway, she knew she was in trouble. Julian was already back. She walked into the living room and saw him sitting on the sofa, jacket off, reading a newspaper. His tie was loosened, revealing the smooth line of his throat. Nina quickly averted her eyes. Where were you? His voice came from behind her. Nina had no choice but to answer truthfully. We went to eat near campus. We came right back after. A small smile played on Julian's lips. Good, at least she knew to confess. $10,000 will be deducted from the card today. Nina froze and whipped around. Why? I didn't break any rules. Julian's handsome face was icy. Didn't you? Think carefully. She paused, replaying the day's events in her mind. She remembered introducing herself to Kyan Jai as Julian's sister. Her brow furrowed. You said I couldn't call you brother. You never said I couldn't admit to being your sister. But Julian was not in a forgiving mood. He put down his newspaper and looked at her directly. "I set the rules. You don't have a choice. If you don't agree, we can cancel the deal at any time." Chapter 28. Despicable Nina was furious but helpless. He held all the power. She was at his mercy. "I was wrong. It won't happen again." Seeing her finally submit, a satisfied smirk appeared on his face. Nina swallowed her resentment. "But if someone asks about our relationship, what am I supposed to say?" A dark glint flashed in his eyes. His voice was calm. "Tell the truth." Tell the truth? Nina didn't understand. In her mind, the truth of their relationship was that they were siblings. But obviously, that was no longer acceptable. She shook her head. "Besides siblings, I don't know what other relationship we have that's presentable. Housemates?" Her words made his face darken, as if a storm was about to break. He closed the distance between them, his long fingers tipping her chin up, and kissed her. Nina froze, mortified. The servants were still around. Mrs. Zhang, Uncle Zhao, they had all watched her grow up. What would they think if they saw them like this? She reacted instantly, pushing him away. Julian licked his lips, completely unfazed. "Now, do you understand what our relationship is?" Her cheeks burning, she fled to her room and refused to come out. Thankfully, Julian didn't bother her for the rest of the night, and she managed to get a rare, peaceful sleep. The next morning, she left before he was up. She had promised to work at La Cave Privé today and couldn't be late. When she arrived, Susan was already there, greeting her with a warm smile. "Nina, you're so early, have you had breakfast?" Nina smiled back. "I have, Susan. I'm ready to start whenever you are." Susan was impressed. She handed Nina a uniform and personally took her to the wine cellar to explain the procedures. Having grown up in the Gu household, Nina was familiar enough with wine to pick things up quickly. "Nina, you're a natural. You're learning so fast." Nina blushed. "It's only because you're a good teacher." After a bit more small talk, Susan left her to it. The work was relatively easy. She just had to provide basic explanations about the vintage and region to clients. Most of the clientele were wealthy and knowledgeable about wine, so they didn't require much from her. It was the perfect job, discreet and unlikely to be discovered by Julian. Just as she was congratulating herself, an unexpected guest arrived near the end of her shift. Chapter 29. It was Kaiyan Jai, the man she had just met yesterday. He wasn't her client. At her current skill level, she wasn't qualified to assist someone of his stature. But the senior sommelier assigned to him had just stepped away, leaving Nina to fill in. When they saw each other, both of them were stunned. Today, Kaiyan wasn't in a suit. He wore a stylish black leather jacket, looking every bit the handsome, rebellious scion, a stark contrast to the polished businessman from the day before. Seeing Nina in a uniform, it took Kaiyan a moment to be sure it was her. Julian Gu was one of the richest men in the country, and his sister was working as a cellar hand. This was getting interesting. He greeted her first. "Well, if it isn't Miss Jiang, what are you doing here?" Nina blushed, nervously fiddling with her fingers. "Mr. Jai, hello. What a coincidence." She didn't answer his question, her mind racing for an escape plan. Thankfully, Kaiyan didn't press. He just smiled thoughtfully. "Is your friend feeling better? She seemed to be in a lot of pain yesterday." The mention of Mia made Nina even more embarrassed. She gave a weak smile. "She's fine. Are you here to buy wine? Can I help you with anything?" Kaiyan browsed the racks, his eyes constantly drifting back to Nina. He seemed a few years younger than Julian, and his personality was the complete opposite. If she hadn't seen him in a suit yesterday, she would have thought she'd mistaken him for someone else. "Don't call me Mr. Jai. I'm not that much older than you, and I'm not a stick in the mud like your brother. Just call me Kaiyan." At the mention of Julian, Nina's expression twitched. She quickly smoothed it over. "Okay, then you should call me Nina." They chatted easily. When it came to wine, Kaiyan was far more knowledgeable than she was. What started as her giving him a tour quickly turned into him giving her a lesson. She learned that Kaiyan had just returned from abroad. He was the sole heir to his family's fortune and was being groomed to take over the business. His father, who was now gravely ill, had let him live a wild life overseas. Now, he had no choice but to step up. His meeting with Julian had been about a potential partnership. The Jai family wasn't on the same level as the Gus, but they were still a major player in the city. Moreover, Kian had a brilliant business mind. In less than 6 months, he had grown the Jai Corporation to be second only to Olympus Corp. He was also easygoing and fun to be around. They ended up talking for the entire afternoon. To support her, Kian made a grand gesture and ordered $5 million worth of wine. For him, $5 million was a trivial sum. For Nina, it was an unimaginable fortune. Chapter 30, as she walked him out, Nina made him promise not to tell Julian she was working there. Kian's sharp, handsome eyes twinkled. "Why are you so afraid of your brother? Working to support yourself is a good thing. What's there to hide?" She forced a smile and spun a lie. "You know we're not real siblings. If I'm out here working, people might think he's mistreating me. That would be bad for his image. And you know him, his reputation is everything. So please, help me out and don't say anything." Kian found the reason absurd but agreed with a smile. This girl was interesting. She had the face of a femme fatale but dressed so simply. She had a bright, lively personality but acted like a frightened lamb around Julian. It seemed this little lamb was actually a wolf cub in disguise. He had thought his return to the country would be boring. Now, it looked like he wouldn't be short on entertainment. After her shift, Nina changed and rushed back to the Gu estate. Every Sunday, Julian had a set routine. Golf in the morning, followed by a trip to the spa. He usually wouldn't be back until 8 or 9 in the evening. As long as she got home before then, her secret was safe. She had begged Mrs. Zhang and Uncle Zhao to cover for her, and they had agreed. As long as nothing unexpected happened, she was in the clear. When she got home, Julian was, as expected, not back yet. She changed into her pajamas and sat on the sofa, pretending to have just woken up from a nap while watching TV. She must have been more tired than she thought, because she actually fell asleep on the sofa. Sometime later, she felt as if she were floating, her body light and weightless. She was too tired to open her eyes, just murmuring softly before drifting off again. Julian stood on the landing, looking at the small figure curled up in his arms. A small, involuntary smile touched his lips. She hadn't changed. Just like when she was a child, she would do her homework in the living room, then watch TV until she fell asleep on the sofa, sleeping so soundly that even Mrs. Zhang couldn't wake her. By the time she was a teenager, Mrs. Zhang couldn't carry her anymore. It was he who would lift her up and carry her to her bed. Sometimes she would still be angry in her dreams, her little hands clenched into fists, muttering meanie or jerk. He always knew who she was talking about. In the blink of an eye, she was all grown up. The skinny little girl had blossomed into a beautiful young woman, but she still felt so light in his arms. Julian's brow furrowed. Was the food at home that bad? Why was she still so thin? He gently placed her on her bed, tucked her in, and closed the door behind him. That night, Nina slept soundly, without a single dream. She was usually plagued by nightmares, waking up multiple times. A good night's sleep put her in a good mood. As she was leaving for work the next morning, she ran into Julian. For days, she had been giving him the silent treatment over the incident with Leo. But today, feeling refreshed, she greeted him first. "Morning." Julian glanced at her, said nothing, and got into his car. Chapter 31, Mrs. Zhang, however, was delighted by Nina's change in attitude. "Nina, that's the way talk to the young master more, fight less. He has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Yesterday, he saw you sleeping on the sofa and was worried you'd catch a cold. He was the one who carried you upstairs. Julian carried her upstairs yesterday." Nina was stunned, finding it hard to believe. He hated her so much. Why would he willingly touch her? So that feeling of floating hadn't been a dream. The thought made her cheeks flush. As Mrs. Zhang continued to chatter, Nina quickly escaped into the car. By the time she got to the office, most people were already there. The moment she walked in, the lively chatter died down. "Just get used to it," she told herself. "You're not here to make friends anyway." She walked to her desk and sat down. Before she could even get settled, Clara, the colleague who was friendlier to her, came over with a cup of coffee. "Here, have some coffee." Nina was taken aback by Clara's sudden friendliness and gave an awkward smile. "Thanks, but I don't drink coffee." Clara wasn't deterred. She leaned in closer, her voice low and secretive. "Nina, did you hear? Laura Vance was fired." Nina was still processing the fact that Clara had called her Nina so familiarly when the second part of her sentence hit her. "I didn't know." "When did that happen?" Seeing Nina's interest, Clara became more animated. "It happened last Friday. You know, after she gave you all that trouble and said those nasty things, she was called down to HR at the end of the day to get her final paycheck." Nina guessed she must have made some major mistake to be fired so abruptly. She wouldn't be so conceited as to think Julian had done it to defend her. Seeing her silence, Clara continued, "I never liked her anyway. She's incompetent and always bossing people around. Nina, let me tell you, if I had been there when you two were arguing, I would have totally had your back." "Now that the coast is clear, you're the brave one," Nina thought, amused. She didn't bother to respond. Even with Nina's cold shoulder, Clara wasn't about to give up. Laura had been at Olympus for years, and she was gone just like that. It had to be because she had crossed Nina. In fact, it wasn't just Laura. Several others who had been fired recently had one thing in common. They had all gossiped about Nina. This Nina clearly had some powerful backing, and Clara was not about to make an enemy of her. Nina watched Clara's complete turnaround and knew exactly what she was thinking. If Clara knew that Julian hated her more than anyone, she would probably regret today's actions deeply. The morning was painfully slow. With the cautionary tale of Laura fresh in everyone's minds, no one dared to ask her for help with faxes or printing. She was happy for the peace and quiet and started scrolling through her phone. Just as she was engrossed in a video, a long, slender hand shot out and snatched the phone from her grasp. Chapter 32, she looked up with a start and met Kyan Jai's roguish grin. "Little girl, slacking off on company time is not a good look." Nina's face went crimson. With people watching, she couldn't make a scene. She lowered her voice, a hint of annoyance in her tone. "What are you doing here?" Kyan's smile was bright. "I'm here to discuss a partnership with your CEO. I get off the elevator and what do I see? You, sitting right outside his office, scrolling on your phone. I have to say, you've got guts, slacking off right under his nose." Nina was mortified, her head bowed in shame. Seeing her embarrassment, Kyan stopped teasing her. He placed the phone back in her hand and patted her shoulder in a mock authoritative manner. "Keep up the good work, Jiang." With that, he followed Liam into the CEO's office. Once the door was closed, someone sidled up to her desk. "Nina, how do you know Mr. Jai? You two seem so close." Nina gave a sheepish smile. "We're not that close. Mr. Jai is just a very friendly person." "That makes sense," the colleague nodded. "He does seem very approachable, and so handsome he's right up there with our CEO. SHH, keep your voice down, you want to get fired for gossiping about the CEO?" The group quickly dispersed. For the rest of the day, Nina didn't dare touch her phone. She couldn't bear the thought of Julian and Kyan walking out and catching her in the act again. The two of them seemed to have a lot to discuss. They didn't emerge until lunchtime. As the group was leaving, Kyan stopped in front of Nina's desk. "Mr. Gu, why don't we invite Nina to join us for lunch?" His eyes settled on Nina, who had stood up to see them off. Hearing her name, a chill went down Nina's spine. What was Kyan up to? Her relationship with Julian was not what he thought. Julian glanced at her, his voice devoid of emotion. "It seems Mr. Jai has taken a keen interest in our company's assistant." Kyan laughed. "Not at all, Mr. Gu. On second thought, let's just go ourselves. I wouldn't want you to accuse me of poaching your staff during a business meeting. I couldn't bear the guilt." With that, they walked past her. Nina watched Julian's retreating back, a sense of unease creeping over her. That feeling lasted all the way until she got home that evening. After dinner, she went to her room early and, for good measure, locked the door. She couldn't forget the warning look in Julian's eyes as he left the office. Mrs. Zhang, concerned, knocked on her door for a long time, thinking she was unwell. Only after Mrs. Zhang left did Nina finally start to drift off. In the middle of the night, she was woken by the sound of a key turning in the lock. Sleep vanished instantly. Before she could react, Julian had opened the door and stepped inside. She stared at him in shock. How did you open?" Chapter 33, a cold smirk played on Julian's lips as he tossed a key onto the bed in front of her. "Did you really think a little trick like that could stop me?" Nina angrily snatched the key. He had always been this arrogant. She remembered as a child, when he had angered her to the point of a hunger strike, she would lock herself in her room. But Mrs. Zhang always had a way of getting the door open, no matter how many locks she tried. It seemed her only option was to change the lock when he wasn't home. As if reading her mind, Julian chuckled. "Don't even think about the lock. No matter how many you change, I'll always find a way to open it." Nina clutched the blanket tightly, biting her lip. "This is your house. You can do whatever you want. I'm going to sleep. We can talk about whatever it is tomorrow." Her cold, dismissive attitude fanned the flames of his anger. What was this? She was all smiles and laughter with Kaiyan Jai, but the moment she saw him, her face turned to ice. His expression darkened. He took off his jacket, pulled back the covers, and lay down beside her. "You seem to be quite close with Kaiyan Jai." Feeling the warmth of his body next to hers, Nina's face flushed. She instinctively scrambled away. What are you doing?" He turned, grabbing her wrist with one hand and flipping himself on top of her. He didn't answer her question, just silenced her with a cold, hard kiss. The air was filled with his unique scent. Nina's mind grew hazy, her body temperature rising. She tried to struggle, but he had her hands pinned, rendering her helpless. Just before she was completely lost, she bit down hard on his lip. Julian cried out in pain and pulled back. The next second, she saw the fury blazing in his eyes, a fire hot enough to incinerate her. "Nina," she flinched, instinctively trying to back away. "I'm sorry, I wasn't ready." She kept scooting backward, not realizing she had reached the edge of the bed. As she started to fall, her hand flailed out, grabbing the only thing within reach, the bedside lamp. The lamp crashed to the floor with her, shattering into 1,000 pieces. She landed right on top of the broken glass, the pain so intense she couldn't even scream. Nina, in a flash, Julian was off the bed and scooping her up into his arms. Nina's face was chalk white, the pain making her vision swim. She felt like a pincushion, her back embedded with shards of glass. Any movement sent waves of agony through her. "Julian, it hurts." Julian's brows were knitted together in a tight line. He carried her quickly downstairs, laid her face down in the back seat of the car, and sped off. The entire way, Nina couldn't stop whimpering in pain. She kept her eyes squeezed shut, her fingers digging into the seat cushions as tears streamed down her face. Julian kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, his jaw tight. Seeing her cry, he couldn't help but mutter, "Serves you right." Chapter 34, the words sent a wave of dizziness through Nina. She buried her face in her arms and started muttering under her breath. Julian strained to hear what she was saying and realized she was cursing him. The same few words she had used since she was a child. She really hadn't learned any new insults over the years. He was both annoyed and amused. He pressed harder on the accelerator. When they finally arrived at the hospital, Julian carried her into the emergency room, placed her on a gurney, and watched as the doctors wheeled her into a treatment room. He sat on a bench in the hallway, staring at the glowing red "in use" sign. 12 years ago, on a night just like this, he had sat in this very hallway and listened to a doctor pronounce his parents dead. Nina, who had been brought in with them, was covered in blood but miraculously unharmed. She had been terrified. When she saw him, she had run to him and clung to his leg, crying his name, saying she was sorry, that she had killed his mom and dad. At that moment, Julian had been terrifyingly cold. He had ignored the trembling, sobbing girl and pushed her away with disgust. It was probably from that moment on that she stopped relying on him. She no longer called him brother, no longer followed him around like a shadow. Even though she still lived in his house, the bright, cheerful girl who had first arrived was gone. She became quiet and obedient, always tiptoeing around, as if terrified of setting him off. Inside the treatment room, Nina lay on her stomach, sobbing in pain. The bright, shadowless lamp above her hurt her eyes. She squeezed them shut, feeling like a helpless animal as the doctor painstakingly removed the glass shards from her back, one by one. "This is going to sting a bit. Try to bear with it," a gentle voice said. The doctor, seeing how scared she was, tried to comfort her as he worked. There were so many tiny pieces of glass. Her back was a mess of blood and torn flesh. It was a long, arduous process. The pain eventually gave way to a dull numbness. All she could do was clutch the pillow beneath her. In a daze, she remembered when she was little, how her classmates would run to their parents for comfort when they were hurt or upset. But she was always the one who would act as if nothing had happened, going home without a word. It was only when Mrs. Zhang was doing her laundry and found bloodstains on her clothes that anyone would know she had been injured. She had been like that for as many years as she could remember. After what felt like an eternity, she felt a cool sensation on her back, and then a blanket was draped over her as she was wheeled out of the room. She thought she saw Julian in the distance. The familiar sense of oppressive pressure washed over her. She remembered the expensive lamp she had broken, the fact that he had to drive her here in the middle of the night. She braced herself for another tirade. So when she saw him stand up and walk toward her, she immediately squeezed her eyes shut and pretended to be asleep. At first, she was just pretending. But she was so exhausted and drained that she soon drifted off for real. Julian sat in the hospital room, watching Nina, her face still tear-stained and his brow furrowed deeper. "Hurts," she mumbled in her sleep. Julian listened closely and realized she was calling for her mom and dad. Chapter 35. A sharp pang went through his heart. He suddenly remembered that she, like him, had no parents. He sat with her all night. When Liam arrived the next morning, he was shocked to find his CEO looking as alert as ever, despite not having slept a wink. "Sir, I've brought the change of clothes you asked for. Today's meeting isn't that urgent. Are you sure you don't want to get some rest?" He shook his head, changed his clothes, and got into the car headed for the office. "Call Mrs. Zhang and have her prepare some light, bland food and bring it over." Liam didn't understand his boss. It was so obvious that he cared deeply for Nina, yet he always put on such a cold, intimidating front, making her terrified of him. "Sir, if you care about Miss Jiang so much, why don't you just tell her?" The temperature in the car seemed to drop several degrees. Julian didn't even look up. "Do your job. Don't ask questions that don't concern you." Liam said no more. After so many years with Julian, he knew when to back off. At the hospital, Nina woke up to find her back so stiff she could barely move. The door opened, and a young nurse came in to give her an IV. Seeing she was awake, she struck up a conversation. "Feeling better? You really need to be more careful. How did you manage to get glass shards in your back?" Nina thought back to last night's scene, and her face turned bright red. I rolled over in my sleep and wasn't paying attention." "Nurse, will it leave a scar?" The nurse smiled. Young girls were always worried about their appearance. "Medical technology is so advanced now. Even if there's a scar, it can be removed. Besides, I saw how much your husband cares about you. A scar won't matter to him." The young nurse probably didn't recognize Julian. Seeing how frantic he had been last night, she must have mistaken them for a newly married couple. Nina was too embarrassed to correct her. Thankfully, the nurse changed the subject. "For the next few days, no strenuous activity and don't get it wet. The weather is warm, and if it gets infected, it will likely scar. Your husband is so good to you. You should have seen him last night. He sat by your bed all night without sleeping, wiping your sweat, giving you water. He was so gentle. You're so lucky to have such a handsome and caring husband." Nina's face was burning. She mumbled a few non-committal responses and then fell silent. After the nurse left, Nina lay there, her mind replaying the nurse's words. Julian stayed by her side all night. Thinking about it, it wasn't impossible. Her injury was largely his fault. She had fallen off the bed trying to get away from him. He probably felt a little guilty. Nina felt her luck had run out. She had just found a part-time job, and now she was injured. Based on her condition, she'd be out of commission for at least a week or two. She picked up her phone and called Susan, who was very understanding and told her to focus on getting better. That afternoon, Mrs. Zhang arrived with a large bag of essentials and a thermos of chicken soup. Nina hadn't told her about the injury, so she figured Julian must have called her. Chapter 36. Mrs. Zhang was a born chatterbox. The moment she saw Nina, she didn't stop. "Nina, how on earth did you fall out of bed and get so hurt? You should have seen how worried the young master was. He rushed you here without even changing his shoes. Mr. Liam had to bring him a fresh set this morning. I know you two have feelings for each other. The young master genuinely loves you. You should just be with him." The words hit Nina like a tidal wave, leaving her stunned. They have feelings for each other? Julian genuinely loves her. The idea was so shocking she couldn't process it. She had never dared to imagine that Julian could love her. "Mrs. Zhang, please stop." Nina cut her off, drank some soup, and then pretended to be tired, gently sending her home. The hospital was quiet. She was finally able to get some undisturbed rest. In the afternoon, the nurse announced she had a visitor. She thought it was Julian, but when the door opened, she saw Kaiyan Jai. Their relationship was not close enough to warrant a hospital visit. She was truly surprised to see him. "What are you doing here? Wait, how did you know I was in the hospital?" A bright smile lit up Kaiyan's handsome face. "I wasn't here specifically to see you. I was visiting a friend and happened to see your name on the visitor log. I asked the nurse, and here I am. Yesterday you were fine, and today you're in the hospital." Nina sighed. "Life is unpredictable, isn't it? And here I thought you came to see me, not to laugh at my misfortune." Kaiyan's smile widened. "I'm not that petty, see? I brought you fruit and flowers." She laughed. She had to admit, although she hadn't known Kaiyan for long, they got along incredibly well like old friends. "You know," she said, "you're so understanding and funny. Your girlfriend must be very happy." Kaiyan, who was peeling an apple for her, teased back, "Unfortunately, no one's taken me up on the offer yet. Since you're so curious, why don't you try dating me and experience the joy of being my girlfriend for yourself?" Nina laughed, about to retort, when the door was suddenly pushed open. They both looked toward the door and saw Julian, his face dark, his eyes filled with a stormy rage. Nina's heart skipped a beat. She tried to sit up, forgetting about her injured back. She lost her balance and started to fall sideways. Careful Kaiyan quickly reached out to steady her, but in the next second, Julian was there, forcefully pushing him away. The sudden movement sent a searing pain through Nina's back. Kaiyan stood to the side, a playful glint in his eyes as he watched Julian's frantic display. Mr. Gu seems a bit overly concerned for his sister. Chapter 37. Julian's face was grim, radiating a do-not-approach aura. "And I'm surprised to see that Mr. Jai is so close with Nina." Now it was Nina's turn to be terrified. What did he just call her? Nina? Something was wrong with Julian today. He was acting like a completely different person. Kaiyan, ever sharp, picked up on the hostility in Julian's tone. He put down the half-peeled apple. "Well, since Mr. Gu is here, I'll be going. Nina, take care of yourself." Nina awkwardly thanked him and watched him leave. Then she shot an angry glare at Julian. Her glare seemed to baffle him. Was she blaming him for interrupting her private time with Kaiyan? "You're very close with Kaiyan Jai?" Julian asked, his voice still icy. She shook her head, still lying on her stomach. "He wasn't here specifically to see me. It was just a coincidence. Don't go after him." Her words, so quick to defend Kaiyan, made Julian's chest tighten. He dropped onto the chair beside her bed. "What? You've fallen for him. Let me tell you, someone from his family would never be interested in someone like you." His words were like a needle to her heart. Even though she had no romantic feelings for Kaiyan, Julian's comment stung. Someone like her. What kind of person was that? "Don't worry, I have no such delusions. I know someone like me isn't good enough for him. I would never try to climb that social ladder. This is just who I am. You don't need to humiliate me over and over again." She said it all in one breath, her eyes welling up with tears. She didn't know if it was the pain from her back or the pain from his words, but she couldn't stop them from falling. She didn't want to cry in front of him, but she couldn't help it. Seeing her tears, Julian frowned. This girl's temper was getting worse. She used to be so timid. Now, for every one thing he said, she had 3 retorts. He reached out to touch her face, but she turned away, clearly unwilling to communicate. Julian's brow furrowed even deeper. Do you really hate me that much? Nina thought of all the cruel things he had said, and the years of pent-up grievances overflowed. Yes, I hate you. I hate you so much. I've disliked you from the first moment I saw you. You're moody and weird and cold, and all you know how to do is get angry at me. In all these years, have you ever spoken to me gently? Every holiday, every birthday, I spent alone. I tried so hard to please you, but you never appreciated it. You control who I can be friends with, you forbid any man from getting close to me, and just because Leo liked me, you ruined his family. Do you know how terrifying you are? I don't know what I am to you. A pet. A toy without a mind of its own? How long do you plan on keeping me trapped? Forever. But you'll get married someday. You have so many girlfriends, you can't keep me locked up by your side forever. One day you'll have to let me go. Julian, I'm begging you. I know I'm a terrible person. If you really hate me this much, then just let me leave. That way, I won't be an eyesore to you, and you won't have to be reminded of how I killed your parents. Wouldn't that be better? Chapter 38, she spoke for a long time, as if trying to pour out more than a decade of suppressed pain. Julian watched her, his sharp eyes like a probe, seeming to peer directly into her soul. So she really did hate him this much. His mind drifted. He remembered every one of Nina's birthdays, how he would pretend to be busy at the office and never come home. He would have Mrs. Zhang prepare her favorite meal and buy her a gift, always instructing her never to tell Nina it was from him. He was a walking contradiction, his feelings for her a tangled mess of love and hate. Every time he was kind to her, he would be haunted by the memory of his parents, as if every act of kindness was a betrayal. But then he would see her, so careful and timid, and he could never bring himself to be truly cruel. Perhaps he had been wrong all along. Julian's voice was cold. If I let you leave the Gu family, leave me, right now, would you agree? Nina's vision was blurred with tears. She could barely make out his face. Let her leave? Would he really? It seemed like a cruel joke. She didn't look up. Yes, I would agree immediately. I've wanted to leave you for a long time. I want to go as far away as possible and never see you again. The temperature in the room seemed to drop to absolute zero. Julian's hands clenched into tight fists, the anger in his chest threatening to turn him into a feral beast. The seconds ticked by. Nina braced herself for the storm, but nothing happened. She stole a glance at him. His eyes were dark and intense, as if he was trying to absorb her into his very being. After a long silence, he let out a heavy sigh. Fine. After you're discharged, you don't have to come back to the estate. From now on, we're even. With that, as if he couldn't bear to stay a moment longer, he stood up and stormed out of the room. It took Nina a moment to process what had just happened. Julian was really letting her go? Did that mean their previous agreement was void? She couldn't quite believe it. It wasn't in his character to let her go so easily. But for the next few days, Julian didn't come to the hospital. When she was discharged, Mrs. Zhang and the driver were there to pick her up. It was only then that she realized he was serious. Nina, what happened between you and the young master? He told me to pack all your things. He said you won't be coming back to the estate anymore. Nina looked at the luggage in the trunk, a strange heaviness settling in her chest. This was what she had always wanted, wasn't it? She was finally free. She no longer had to live under Julian's thumb. She could do whatever she wanted, be friends with whomever she pleased. Mrs. Zhang sighed. I don't know what's going on with you two. The young master said the money in the bank card he gave you is yours to keep. You don't have to pay him back. $100,000 was no small sum for Nina. In the past, she might have proudly returned it, but now she was on her own. She needed money for rent, for food. She needed it. She would pay him back someday, when she had saved enough. As the car drove away, Nina felt a wave of panic. From now on, she was just an ordinary person, free. This was what she had always wanted, so why wasn't she ecstatic? Why did she feel this sense of loss? Chapter 39, the car moved slowly, but Nina's chest felt tight. She rolled down the window for some air and her phone rang. It was Liam. He rarely called her. She hesitated for a moment before answering. Miss Jiang, where are you right now? Her heart started to pound erratically. I'm in the car. Is something wrong? Liam's voice was trembling. The CEO was in a serious car accident. He's in the ER right now. You need to come to the hospital immediately. The world seemed to explode in a deafening roar. Everything went silent. It felt as if 1,000 wheels were rolling over her head, her eardrums about to burst. She clutched the phone, the voice on the other end a distant buzzing. Miss Jiang? Miss Jiang, are you still there? After what felt like an eternity, Nina finally snapped back to reality. She got the hospital address from Liam and frantically told the driver to change course. She didn't remember arriving at the hospital. The driver had to call her name several times before she stumbled out of the car. She felt dizzy and lightheaded as she staggered to the emergency room. By the time she reached the doors, she was on the verge of collapsing. Liam saw her from a distance and rushed to support her. Miss Jiang, you're finally here. Nina's jaw was clenched so tight it ached. It took her a long time to find her voice. How is he? Liam looked at the flashing red light above the operating room doors, his eyes filled with despair. He was already unconscious when they brought him in. A violent wave of dizziness washed over her. She had to brace herself against the wall to stay upright. Time crawled by. She felt the warmth drain from her body. How could this have happened? Just a few days ago, he had been standing in front of her, so arrogant and alive. Liam handed her Julian's phone. The CEO was driving himself today. He's been in a bad state lately. When the crash happened, he was about to call you. Nina stared at the phone, stained with Julian's blood. Her heart felt like it was splitting in two. She swiped the screen on and saw his wallpaper. It was a photo of her from her 18th birthday. Tears fell uncontrollably, blurring the screen. She tried to wipe them away, but more just kept coming. The phone was locked. Her hand shaking, she typed in her own birthday. It unlocked. She opened his contacts and saw that he had saved her name as Nina. Her hands trembled as she opened his photo gallery. There were over 1,000 pictures, all of her. From the time she was 12, every birthday, pictures of her eating, crying, laughing, fighting with him. She never knew she had gotten angry so many times. Why had he never told her any of this? Nina clutched the phone tightly, as if she could feel his warmth through it. Please, God, let him be okay. Was she really a jinx? Had she killed his parents and now him too? If she could, she would trade her own life for theirs. Miss Jiang, why don't you sit down? Don't be too upset. The CEO will be fine. Liam, seeing her distress, tried to comfort her. She sank to the floor, her body feeling boneless. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have said those things. I did this to him. Liam, do you understand? I'm the one who hurt him. I didn't mean it. He made me so angry, I just said those things to hurt him. But I didn't mean any of it. I've never hated him. Even when he hated me, I never hated him. I regret it so much. So much. She was sobbing uncontrollably, so lost in her grief that she didn't notice someone approaching. A pair of strong arms wrapped around her, pulling her into a tight embrace. The scent was familiar. Held in his arms, she slowly started to calm down. She looked up and saw who was holding her. Chapter 40, J. Julian. There he was, perfectly fine, kneeling beside her. His handsome features were illuminated by the hospital lights, not a scratch on him. Sir, you're okay? Liam, standing behind them, was equally shocked. Nina reached out, her hands frantically checking him for injuries, the tears still streaming down her face. Where are you hurt? Are you okay? Let me see. Seeing her frantic concern, Julian's heart melted. He gently wiped away her tears and pulled her into a tight hug. I'm fine. It wasn't me in the accident. The hospital made a mistake. Confirming that he was safe and sound, Nina finally let out a loud, unrestrained sob. You scared me to death. I thought you. He patted her back, a small laugh escaping him. You thought I was dead. Wouldn't that be what you wanted? You hate me after all. Nina froze. This time, she didn't argue. She just looked at him, her expression serious. I have never, ever thought that. If you had died, I wouldn't have wanted to live either. Julian was stunned. He had never expected her to say something like that. He was deeply moved, looking into her clear, determined eyes. For a moment, he was speechless. He had been so important to her all along. For all these years, they had been so stubborn, neither of them willing to admit that they were the most important person in each other's lives. If it hadn't been for this accident, they might have truly gone their separate ways. Julian held her tighter, his voice softer and more gentle than she had ever heard it. I'm sorry, it's my fault. For all these years, I refused to admit how I felt, so I used the wrong ways to push you further away. I thought that by possessing you, I was showing you how I felt, but I never realized how much I was hurting you. Nina, I'm sorry. No one ever taught me how to love someone. Can you forgive me? Nina, nestled in his arms, thought she must be dreaming. She looked up at him, dazed. What did you say? You love me. He nodded, his face filled with a tenderness she had never seen before. I was always too proud. But seeing you so heartbroken, so brave, today, I can't lie to myself anymore. Nina, I love you. Let me take care of you for the rest of our lives. Will you let me? Nina's head was spinning. But you have so many girlfriends. Isabel and Sasha and… Her words were silenced by his kiss. When she opened her eyes, all she could see was his handsome face, reflected in her pupils. No, the only woman I have ever had is you. They were just tools to make you jealous. But you never seemed to care, and all it did was cause more trouble for me. 1,000 emotions swirled in Nina's heart. For so many years, she had been in love with him but had never dared to say it. Their sibling relationship made it impossible. And now, he was telling her that he felt the same way. She didn't know if she was lucky or unlucky. All she knew was that as long as Julian was safe and by her side, she was content. Julian helped her to her feet. All right, let's go home. She turned her face away. I don't have a home anymore. You kicked me out. Seeing her pout, Julian couldn't help but laugh. You're the lady of the house. How could I ever kick you out? The tears were still on her cheeks, but now she was smiling. Then you can never, ever tell me to leave again. He put his arm around her shoulder. Never, not for the rest of our lives. As they walked out of the hospital, Mrs. Zhang saw them arm in arm and beamed. Oh, Miss Nina, you rushed here in such a panic. You scared me half to death. I'm so glad to see you two are okay. Everything is okay. A small smile played on Julian's lips. His voice was deep and steady. From now on, you'll call her Mrs. Gu.